looking at the numbers, actually, you can see that intra-African trade has increased. And when we have some numbers and from data that is available, we see that intra-African trade has improved, let's say, from the US dollars 140 billion in 2017 to about $190 billion in 2023. This shows a really remarkable increase in terms of intra-African trade, and even for the continent, there has been great increase even in terms of the percentages. And we see that if you look at data that was in the Afreximbank trade report, they have indicated that Africa is growing at about 4.2%. Yes, our target was at 5%, but we are still on it, and it's actually quite encouraging that last year, though with all the challenges that are there, we were still able to grow and not decline. And I think the future is looking quite bright in that way.
That's interesting, and of course we should celebrate some things here in Africa once we have those. But you know, there was the introduction of PAPS, because payment system was named as one of the hurdles to boosting trade on the continent. I mean, even personally, I've experienced it where you travel to a neighboring country, you want to pay for a hotel, and it's a whole lot of trouble. But we've had PAPS. Has that made any change? How effective has that been?
Yeah, PAPS in full, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, is really a payment system that has been developed between Afreximbank and the AfCFTA Secretariat. And of course, as you have mentioned, the intention is to ensure that we improve payments in the continent. And how to do this? What PAPS, one of the key things about PAPS is that it actually ensures that we are paying in our own local currency in real time. So they're able to get then the exchange rate directly. Let's say I come from Kenya shillings to the Ghanaian cedis or to the Naira of Nigeria. And you have then a payment that needs to be done from Nigeria to Kenya. Kenya, we use Kenya shillings. And that payment then can be done in Naira from the person who is buying goods, let's say from Kenya. And the funds are then received in Kenya shillings by the seller who is based in Kenya. So it actually helps Africa to bypass the problem that we have in Africa, where we have 42 different currencies in the continent. So perhaps we can consider it to be a really game changer in the continent. And another addition to PAPS, it's the marketplace. We have now what we call a PAPS marketplace. And with that, you see, like, if you have a situation where a company has funds that are stuck in one country, then they are able to then balance it out with the funds in another country where that company would otherwise be having funds stuck. Maybe to give a concrete example, if Kenya Airways has funds in Nigeria that they are not being able to repatriate back to Kenya, then you look for a company that is operating in Kenya, let's say Dangote, and Dangote also has some monies that are stuck in Kenya, then you can do an exchange in terms of balancing out those funds between the two countries. So PAPS also now has that angle. And if you put it further, PAPS is part of the African Trade Gateway. And under the African Gateway, you also have the due diligence component. So with the due diligence, one of the key elements is then trusting who you are working with, trusting who you are trading with. And so in that case, then you are able to ensure that the companies that are trading with one another are companies that are well recognized within the continent, and the due diligence has already been done under the ATG platform. Thank you.
Yeah, but we know that PAPS majorly works in a structured environment, but you know, we're still having to cover a lot of grounds when it comes to financial inclusion. So I'm wondering, adoption and accessibility for a majority population on the continent, since we are still looking for how to capture them into the financial inclusion formal system.
Yeah. Yes, and it is still possible. PAPS works through your commercial banks. So it is actually your commercial bank as a small and medium enterprise that you're working with. So the PAPS just provides the platform. PAPS provides the backbone that you can work with. But then they onboard the commercial banks in the different countries where they're operating. And now even they have moved on to fintechs. So that means at the end of the day, if let's say you're using UBA Bank here in Nigeria and you want to transfer money to UBA in, let's say, Rwanda, then you are still under the UBA umbrella. And so you're a customer of UBA. UBA already knows you. And so you can be able then to transfer funds from one country to another. So that way you have that financial inclusion that you are talking about, so that it is not only the big corporations that can actually get access, but even all the micro, small and medium enterprises are actually able to then get the necessary access to be able to send money from one country to another. So yes, there is financial inclusion even under the PAPS platform.
So, I mean, the picture you just painted now is that small businesses, doesn't matter how small, as long as you have an account with a deposit bank, you can go there.
Yes.
After initiating perhaps a transaction with your customer in Kenya, for instance, and then you can actually do your transaction right there through your banks using PAPS. I believe there's a card for it.
Yes, now there is PAPS card. Now with the PAPS card, if you go to your commercial bank and they give you a card, so the same way we use our credit cards or our debit card, that is how you will then be able to use the PAPS card. And that makes it much easier. And as you have mentioned, it brings in the inclusion component that we are actually looking for when we talk about ensuring that we bring our micro, medium and small enterprises into the game.
But, you know, it does seem like there's still the need to overcome some sentiment of competition, even among businesses on the continent. I wonder if AfCFTA is looking that way, addressing that sentiment of competition, so we can settle with comparative advantage among the countries.
Yeah, okay, it's interesting you will say that, because one of the key elements why we are here today in Lagos, Nigeria, is because of the creative industry. So we are looking at the film, the music and the fashion industry. And let us be truthful, Nigeria has the lead in all these three industries. So one component that can reduce the issue of competition is collaboration. So let's say that Nollywood is already now well known in the continent. So how about making it easier to have our actresses, our actors, our technical people from the different parts of the continent being part of Nollywood? How about Nollywood also opening up smaller studios or even big studios in different regions of the continent? So let's not focus on the competition and focus on collaboration. What do I mean by collaboration? You can actually also have joint ventures with different entities around the continent. You can look at it also from the point of view of, let's say, having, like the creatives in this case, because that's what we're here for. The creatives creating their own network whereby they come together. They are able then to lobby even governments to say, look, how about ensuring that it is easy for the professionals in this sector to move from one country to another, to be able to provide their services? How can we reduce the barriers? And that is what, in essence, the AfCFTA is all about, reducing barriers to trade so that we can be able to trade more easily with one another in the continent. Now, one of the key areas that His Excellency Wam Kelemene, our secretary, is always talking about is value chain development. If you do your value chain development and different value chains in different ways, then you're able to bring on board many different countries to be part of that value chain. We have it now. We're looking at the pharmaceutical sector. We are looking at the transport and logistics area. We are looking at agro-business, and we are also looking at the tourism sector. So all these sectors have vast value chains being developed. And from there, then you have the inclusion of many countries, so that we stop looking at it from the point of competition, but look at it from the point of how can we collaborate to actually enhance value chain development in the continent. And in addition to that, if we have to compete because we are at the same level, then there is actually a protocol that is dealing with competition policy that is also have been developed under the AfCFTA framework.
Yeah, very interesting there. But I hope you're also looking at issues around trans-border trade and the checks, the fees, the fines and security there, which in some cases have become very burdensome.
Yeah. So one of the key areas also we are working on is customs administration, looking at how do we harmonize at the border to ensure that first we reduce the hindrances or the barriers that can come up at the border. And one of the key areas to assist us with this and to bring the efficiency is digitalization of border processes. And I can give you a very good example from the East African community. And the East African community has actually been able to come together to look at the different procedures, to have what they call the one-stop border posts. And to have the one-stop border post, what it really entails is that the different officials from the two different countries that are at the border actually then sit together. When they sit together, it is easier for you to then process the paperwork in a more transparent manner and more easily. And here then we are also talking about digitalization. So even the movement of those goods from the origin to the last where they are being delivered, you also digitize that process so that those can be monitored. And I can even actually give you the statistics. We moved from moving goods from Mombasa, the port of Mombasa, to Kigali in Rwanda from 14 days to actually 3 days. So you can actually see what efficiency and digitalization can do. One of the key other elements that is being worked at now is the issue of what they call smart gates. Smart gates means that you are cleared at a certain point before you reach the border, and then at the border, if you have already been cleared, then you will not have to stop at the border. So there is already a digitalization that will be done to ensure that then at the border you do not have to stop. And that is what we are working on, even to enhance that, not only in East Africa, but in Southern Africa, in Central Africa, in West Africa, and also in North Africa.